Tonight on Reporting Scotland, a convicted killer denies stabbing Indian waiter Surjit Singh Chokar almost 18 years ago. Scotland's private sector firms say they've been hit by the vote to leave the EU. The families from war-torn Syria finally reunited and yet still fighting to be allowed to stay together.
I nearly died to be with them, to have them with me. I just can't imagine life without them.
Faith leaders and charities call for more to be done to help them. Also on the programme. Celtic are at the Nou Camp to prepare for their opening Champions League group game with Barcelona. And almost 100 of Scotland's top buildings created in cake. Good evening. The nephew of a man accused of murdering a waiter in Lanarkshire in 1998 has denied committing the crime. Andrew Coulter was giving evidence at the trial of his uncle, Ronnie Coulter, who's accused of stabbing Surjit Singh Chokar to death. Andrew Coulter admitted attacking Mr. Chokar with a homemade bat on the night he died, but said he didn't murder him. From the High Court in Glasgow, Andrew Black reports.
Andrew Coulter, seen here in the grey suit, told the court that on the day of November the 4th, 1998, he went out looking for money to buy alcohol and broke into a flat in Gowk Thrapple, Wishaw, which turned out to be Mr. Chokar's. He said he took a gyro cheque he found there, which he then cashed after his uncle Ronnie Coulter forged Mr. Chokar's signature. Mr. Chokar's partner, Elizabeth Bryce, who previously gave evidence, found out what happened and talked about calling the police. Andrew Coulter told the court that later that night, he, along with Ronnie Coulter and a man called David Montgomery, travelled to Mrs. Bryce's home in Overtown and found Mr. Chokar coming home from work. Andrew Coulter said he shouted at Mr. Chokar, "You better not involve the police." Andrew Coulter said at that point, Mr. Chokar swung a bottle at him, but it missed. Mr. Coulter said he then swung a homemade bat at Mr. Chokar, which struck him on the arm. Andrew Coulter said his knee then gave way and he collapsed on the ground. He said he and David Montgomery left the scene and that Ronnie Coulter was nowhere to be seen. Prosecutor Alex Prentice asked Andrew Coulter if he had stabbed Mr. Chokar. Mr. Coulter responded, "No, I never stabbed him." The court also heard that Andrew Coulter, who's now 35, stabbed and killed a man called Patrick Kelly in 1999 and was sentenced to 6 years detention. Before beginning his evidence, Judge Lord Matthews told Mr. Coulter that he didn't have to answer any questions which might incriminate him in Mr. Chokar's murder. Ronnie Coulter is being tried for a second time for the murder, which he denies. The case continues. Andrew Black, Reporting Scotland, at the High Court in Glasgow.
Scotland's private sector firms saw their output drop again last month. That's according to a survey of 600 of them. It's one of many indicators of how the economy is responding to the vote for Britain to leave the European Union. Here's our business and economy editor, Douglas Fraser.
Thanks, Jackie. Yes, well, Scotland's economy isn't too healthy at the moment. Growth has been weak or stalled for about a year, narrowly avoiding recession. And that's partly due to a deep downturn in the oil and gas industry. Today's business survey shows that the vote to leave the European Union did not help. If we look across the UK as a whole, there was Brexit shock in July. On this measure, it bounced back in August. But here in Scotland, not so much shock, but continuing decline last month, particularly in the large services sector, from accountants to zookeepers. I visited one Scottish firm that's looking beyond Europe to survive.
Superglass in Stirling uses recycled bottles to make loft and wall insulation for our homes. But it's been in trouble for years as the market for these products stalled. The 150 staff here expected it to collapse until this man, Sergei Kalashnikov, a Russian with a big presence in building materials across Eastern Europe and into Asia, bought the business for nearly £9 million.
The company is manufacturing very good products, very high quality products. There's very good staff, and the company has a very good relation with the clients, and I think we can together increase our business.
The company's already cut losses by targeting house builders rather than owners of older homes. And with 10% of output now going abroad, raising that to 40% while brushing aside uncertainty about future trading relations should help this Scottish firm create more jobs.
The plan is to double the capacity of this plant. That will mean significant multi-million investment in the factory. That's encouraging for us, an investment in the infrastructure, and I believe it will be a great opportunity for the personal development of the people who have been part of the business and for us to begin to grow the staffing on this site.
So, jobs secured there in Stirling, but elsewhere it's a different story. 1 in 9 Scots are now self-employed, and that's about 300,000 people. And it's being your own boss where almost all Scottish jobs growth has come from over the last 8 years. According to new RBS analysis, the highest proportion working for themselves is in Orkney and also in mainland rural areas. Is that a good or bad thing? Well, it gives people flexibility, including many reducing their hours ahead of retirement. And if successful, homegrown businesses will take other people on. But it means a lot of people have less job security around hours and contracts. We'll get more of a health check on the Scottish economy later this week with official figures on the cost of living, on pay and jobs. Jackie.
Thank you very much, Douglas. Well, here's a high-profile job loss. The decision of the former Prime Minister, David Cameron, to resign as an MP has prompted new analysis of his tenure in Downing Street. As he leaves political life, what was his impact on Scotland? Well, let's go to our Westminster correspondent, David Porter. David, and as far as Scotland was concerned, it certainly was an eventful premiership.
It certainly was, and Jackie, and in his 11 years as Tory leader and later as Prime Minister, I doubt whether he managed to get bored too many times. For David Cameron, he was the man who brought the Conservatives back into power here at Westminster, initially leading a coalition government with the Liberal Democrats and then as an outright winner of the general election last year. But I think as far as many people in Scotland are concerned, his political career will be defined by 2 votes, agreeing to and winning the Scottish independence referendum in 2014, then of course this year the EU referendum, which he lost. As far as the Scottish referendum was concerned, he put himself at the centre of the Better Together campaign and succeeded in keeping Scotland as part of the UK. He was hoping to repeat that trick a little earlier this year with regards to the EU referendum, but of course he lost, and everything that has followed from that over the summer, culminating today in him deciding to stand down as an MP. As far as politicians here at Westminster are concerned who look at Scottish matters, the SNP have refused to give any public comment tonight. But the Scottish Conservative leader, Ruth Davidson, who's in London, has commented. She said she was very sorry that he was standing down, that he was a man who had transformed the UK and his party.
Thank you very much, David. Rangers say their supporters were subjected to a sickening and shameful display of outright sectarian hatred during Saturday's game at Celtic Park. A supporters group wants the club to ban Celtic fans from Ibrox as a result. Off-field incidents have again overshadowed matters on the park. Alistair Lamont is in the newsroom and can tell us more. Alistair.
Yes, Saturday's game has thrown up several issues. Rangers, as you say, have released a statement following demands from a supporters group that they ban Celtic fans from Ibrox. The club say directors are fully aware of the disgust felt by Rangers supporters who are subjected to a sickening and shameful display of outright sectarian hatred towards them. Now, this relates to a banner held up by Celtic supporters referring to, and this is a direct quote, Hun scum. Pictures have also been published in newspapers and online of effigies of Rangers supporters being hanged. Celtic say they won't become involved in a tit-for-tat spat, but would deal with any issues in a proper and professional manner. They're also clearing up damage caused by Rangers supporters to toilets inside Celtic Park on Saturday. Police said on the day the club were dealing with that internally. The police say they are investigating, adding that the overwhelming majority of those who attended the game behaved responsibly. What is hugely disappointing and frustrating is that a minority of individuals behaved in a manner which has no place in our community's football and modern society. The Scottish Professional League, for their part, say they'll study carefully their match delegates report from the game.
Thank you. Alistair Lamont there with that update. Faith leaders and charities are calling on the Home Office to be more generous to families split whilst fleeing war in Syria. The Scottish Government has also said it wants obstacles to be removed to allow families to be allowed to join those granted refugee status in the UK. Fiona Walker reports.
My name is Ahmed. Omar, I am 9. My name is Mohammed. My name is Mahmoud.
The baby is named Dina Zalgana.
Tentative first words of English for the Zalgana family. The mum and children have been classed as refugees, and this is why.
There were airplanes bombing, and we were in the underground shelter with lots of dust, and the planes were bombing and people were dying.
Now far from the bombing and reunited in Glasgow. The only thing is, the mother and children can stay here. The father cannot.
I nearly died to be with them, to have them with me. I just can't imagine life without them.
He has to prove he is their father to avoid being deported.
The government don't believe they're my family. I'm prepared to prove to them, to take a DNA test or anything they ask for.
I need him and the children need him. I have 2 disabled children. I don't understand the system.
I call for help from the government so I can work and support my family.
200 faith leaders from around the country are making that call for help, saying the UK can do more and quickly.
There is a simple practical step that government can take. It can relax some of the regulations about admitting refugees who have family in this country, who can guarantee that they have a network when they arrive, and that's achievable within a foreseeable time frame.
The Scottish Government is also taking a stance.
Now, we have to be in the business of keeping families together, so we are calling on the UK Government to revisit and revise the guidelines of the Family Reunion Programme.
In response, the Home Office said, the UK has a proud history of granting asylum to those who genuinely need it, and every case is carefully considered on its individual merits. This is what the Zalgana family fled at home in Deraa. 5 years ago, it was the city which sparked the Syrian uprising. Today, a truce begins.
1, 2.
When the war started, school stopped. Now they're learning to read and write, but in a different language, and in the fear they may lose their father once again. Fiona Walker, Reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
You're watching BBC Reporting Scotland. It's 18 minutes to 7, and a reminder of tonight's top story. A convicted killer has denied stabbing Indian waiter Surjit Singh Chokar almost 18 years ago. And still to come, Celtic head to Spain ahead of tomorrow's opening Champions League clash with Barcelona. The removal and dismantling of the North Sea's oldest oil platforms could bring a multi-billion-pound bonanza to Scotland. But the BBC's been told other countries are better prepared to do the work. Well, a row broke out last month after a major contract went to Norway. And Dundee is one of several Scottish ports vying for decommissioning work. Andrew Anderson's been to see how it's gearing up.
Drilling rigs moored in Dundee. They bring welcome work, but this port has its eye on a bigger prize. Dundee Harbour's busy at the moment. There are 3 rigs in for maintenance, but there's plenty of room for decommissioning work. Forth Ports are investing £10 million in the quayside here, and there's more land available at the back where the giant installations could be brought in to be broken up. Installations like these, the towering steel platforms of the North Sea, now approaching the end of their lives. Dundee missed out on the oil boom. Maybe now its time has come.
The people of Dundee have been ready and waiting on this for a number of years now, and I think the belief and the general feeling in the port and the city in general is that we're just on the cusp of something big here.
His boss agrees.
I think once we have the infrastructure ready, which will be by the middle to the end of next year, we see Dundee as an ideal hub for decommissioning, and I think we're well placed to take advantage of a market that's only really just beginning.
Not everyone's so optimistic. There was dismay last month when a major contract to dismantle a North Sea platform went to Norway.
We definitely have the skill set within Dundee, within the Dundee area, and also the people who have been involved in the downturn of the offshore, that we can bring that work here and confidently be able to do it.
Billions were spent building the North Sea's steel giants. Billions more will be spent on removing them. Between now and 2024, 79 platforms are due to be decommissioned. Work valued at around £15 billion, potentially a jobs bonanza. But have Dundee and other Scottish ports risked leaving it too late to win this work?
I think some other competitor locations have developed their supply chain to an extent where they're ahead of us. Now, that means that we can easily catch up. We have the embryonic supply chain in Dundee and at other ports in Scotland, but we need to develop that further.
And that's the challenge of Scotland's to win the decommissioning race, one that could bring a new oil boom. Andrew Anderson, reporting Scotland, Dundee.
A 5-year-old boy has died after being struck by a van in the east end of Glasgow this afternoon. The accident happened just after 3 in Shettleston. He was taken to the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, but he died a short time later. The Humanist Society Scotland is seeking a judicial review of the refusal by Scottish ministers to give older school pupils the right to opt out of religious observance. The Society says a growing number of young people don't identify with any religion. In England and Wales, 16 to 18-year-olds have a right to choose for themselves. We'll now look at other stories from across the country. Airgun owners are being urged to apply for a firearms certificate within the next 50 days. This is to ensure they comply with a new law coming into effect at the end of the year, which requires them to have a permit.
The form is quite simple and straightforward. That needs to be filled in. The only other thing you need is somebody to sign that you're of good character and they've known you for at least 2 years. That then needs to be returned no later, I'm suggesting, than October the 31st.
Motorists using the M8, M73 and M74 on the outskirts of Glasgow are being warned to expect significant disruption over the next 3 months. The next phase of improvement work is underway, and the installation of new gantries means sections of the routes are being reduced to 2 lanes. A number of slip roads will be closed. The design team behind the Olympic Park in London has been given the task of drawing up plans to regenerate a historic Aberdeen city centre park. LDA Design has been chosen to breathe new life into Union Terrace Gardens. 4 years ago, councillors rejected plans for a £140 million transformation of the gardens. The oil tycoon Sir Ian Wood had offered £50 million towards the cost. Edinburgh Airport had an almost 12% increase in passenger numbers this August compared with the same time last year. The rise was in part due to the popularity of the Edinburgh festivals. Photos have been discovered of the construction of a major sewer system in Aberdeen in 1901. The Girdleness outfall scheme was designed to address the sanitary requirements of the growing city. The series of photos were discovered by a Scottish Water employee. A giant spider common in Australia, Africa and Asia has been found inside a shipping container in Dumbarton. The huntsman spider was spotted by staff at a manufacturing firm on Friday. They called in the Scottish SPCA amid concern it could be poisonous. The arachnid specialist identified the spider, which can give a painful bite. The huntsman is being cared for while a suitable home is sought. The first turbine, which will form part of the world's largest tidal energy scheme, has been unveiled in the Highlands. The structure is to be installed in the Pentland Firth as part of a project that could eventually provide enough electricity for 175,000 homes, as Craig Anderson reports.
This is the first of more than 260 undersea turbines set to be sited in the waters between Orkney and the Caithness coast. The May-Gen tidal scheme has been almost a decade in the planning, but those backing the project say Scotland is now on the brink of taking a global lead in tidal energy generation.
What we're seeing here is the application of technology, renewable energy potential on a massive scale, but also the ability to see these turbines manufactured here, and that delivers economic impact and jobs potential that is really significant. So a newly emerging industry, but one in which Scotland is already at the absolute epicentre.
This is a significant day, not just because this is the launch of the first tidal turbine that will be placed in the Pentland Firth, but the backers of the May-Gen project say it's also the birth of a completely new industry here in Scotland.
This is all about repurposing jobs that have recently been lost in the oil and gas sector and putting them to work in the marine renewable sector. You know, Atlantis, we're trying to invest up to £500 million in capex in projects, and for us that's going to translate into thousands of jobs for Scotland.
The waters around Scotland contain a massive potential for marine power, but so far harnessing that has been painfully slow and problematic. With this turbine now ready to go and to be joined by many more, the industry and its political supporters believe the corner has now well and truly been turned. Craig Anderson reporting Scotland on the Cromarty Firth.
Celtic begin their European Champions League campaign tomorrow evening. It's been 3 years since the Scottish League leaders have played at this group stage of the competition. Chris McLaughlin reports from Barcelona's Nou Camp Stadium.
Yes, good evening from one of the most iconic stadiums in world football. Celtic are back in the Champions League. It doesn't get much bigger, it doesn't get much tougher. Now the squad, as you can see, are training behind me here at the Camp Nou at the moment. It's a squad full of confidence. No Lee Griffiths though. Scott Brown also a doubt, although we understand he should be okay to play. But remember, Celtic go into this on the back of a 5-1 victory over Rangers at the weekend. This Moussa Dembele's third in a deadly hat-trick. Now the Celtic manager Brendan Rodgers has also been speaking just a few moments ago about another striker, a man who he worked with at Liverpool, a man who his side will face here tomorrow evening, Luis Suarez.
In this moment in time, Louis is the best striker in the world. I don't think there's any question about that. Luis Suarez is one of the most beautiful men you can come across. Very humble guy who works tirelessly at his profession. He's super professional, a family man who gives everything for his life as a footballer and for his family.
So yes, the perfect build-up for Celtic ahead of this match with that win over Rangers, but not so for Barcelona. They lost to newly promoted side Alaves here on Sunday evening. Their manager, Luis Enrique, the Barcelona boss, has been speaking today. He highlighted Scott Sinclair and Patrick Roberts as dangerous players for Celtic. Now, the last time Celtic were here, back in 2013, they were humbled 6-1. Now, a very different team, a different manager, and the 2,000 Celtic fans travelling here will be hoping for a different result.
Chris McLaughlin. Now, Dumbarton Castle took 3 weeks to make and a day and a half to build. The roof on the Riverside Museum started to slide off halfway through the afternoon, and everyone had problems keeping wasps off their buildings. All occupational hazards for the amateur bakers involved in creating almost 100 of Scotland's top buildings in cake. Our arts correspondent Pauline McLean can tell us more.
From iconic landmarks to newer institutions, this was one way to put Scotland's most recognisable buildings on the map. The biggest cake fest ever staged as part of the year-long Festival of Architecture and Design.
Cake Fest is 50% baking, 50% architecture in many ways, because it's about people only build these buildings because they love them, because they care about them. Maybe it's somewhere where they met their person they married, or maybe it's where they went as children on holiday. You know, they all have a connection to the places. So community is about places and it's about sharing, and I think it's equally about the buildings and the cakes.
Plenty of amateur bakers took up the challenge, with almost 100 structures to choose from.
Our patron is Sir Jackie Stewart, who is severely dyslexic. He's struggled with dyslexia all his life. And it seemed to me to be a really nice tribute to him, because he's done so much work for Dyslexia Scotland, that doing Dumbarton Castle, because as you know, Sir Jackie Stewart comes from Dumbarton, and also because I looked at it, and when you look at it online, it looks so much simpler.
The finished structures had just a few short hours in the limelight, which was just as well, since a few roofs started to melt. And whether bakers or architects, the importance of good foundations became all too apparent.
We've been part of the Festival of Architecture, so we thought it was a really good way of making architecture more approachable, you know, and highlight it. Yeah.
And we thought it was going to be easier when we signed up for this.
Well, apparently you can have your cake and eat it, because after raising money for charity and raising the profile of Scottish architecture, now all that's left to do is eat those cakes. Pauline McLean reporting, Scotland, Stirling.
Lucky Pauline. Now, I was about to moan about the weather, but I think it's been really nice in the east, you were saying.
It's been lovely in parts of the east, yes. Yeah, Jackie. It's very, thank you very much. It's a very warm air mass engulfing Scotland, most of us at the moment. And indeed tonight it'll be humid as well. If we take a look at what's happening, you can see we have this weather front waxing and waning, going a wee bit to the east, then back to the west. But on it, we do have outbreaks of rain with the odd heavier pulse generating through the course of this evening across the southwest in particular. But in the east it's dry, sunlight brightness too for the Western Isles. That rain will continue to push northwards into the Northern Isles tonight. Again, it'll lose its oomph, I think, particularly across more inland areas, becoming largely confined to Western Scotland by the end of the night. There's dry conditions in the east and some mist and low cloud developing here. But look at these temperatures once again, incredibly humid, 17, 18 Celsius. A bit fresher towards the Western Isles. If you like it a bit cooler, that's where to be. But the winds will be light. Tomorrow morning it starts off dry in the east, mist and low cloud burning off quickly. That rain affecting a good part of Western Scotland, but it does generally improve as that weather front retreats to more western areas. It stays cloudy and damp for the likes of Coulter, North Argyll, down towards the Galloway area, but come inland we should see something brighter, brightening up to around the Glasgow area where we see the sunshine, 22 Celsius, even under the cloud, 18 Celsius, and the rain. Something drier and brighter for the Western Isles again tomorrow, not looking too bad. Rain for more inland parts of the Highlands, and we will see rain clearing from the Northern Isles, quite misty and murky across Shetland, though once again warm spells of sunshine for certainly eastern parts of the northeast, 23, maybe 24 Celsius. We might even see 25 or 26 across the border. You can see the sunshine right across eastern Scotland, so faring very well indeed. Still some patchy rain across more western areas tomorrow evening, but something drier and brighter in the east. And then as we head in towards Tuesday night into Wednesday, if you look at the pressure chart, you can see the winds start to go into the east, pushing that weather front further northwest, pushing the rain away, but it also introduces quite a lot of cloud across eastern Scotland. Now, it won't be quite as warm on Wednesday, but still very much on the warm side. Cloudy initially in the east. The cloud does break up. The rain shrinks away. The best of the sunshine will be across the southwest, highs of 22 Celsius. That's your forecast.
Thank you, Judith. And now a reminder of tonight's main news. The former Prime Minister David Cameron has announced he's standing down as an MP. It's just 2 months since he quit as Prime Minister after losing the referendum on leaving the EU. His decision will trigger a by-election in his Oxfordshire constituency. The nephew of a man accused of murdering a waiter in Lanarkshire in 1998 has denied committing the crime. Andrew Coulter was giving evidence at the trial of his uncle, Ronnie Coulter, who's accused of stabbing Surjit Singh Chokar to death. Andrew Coulter admitted attacking Mr Chokar with a homemade bat on the night he died, but said he didn't murder him. And that's Reporting Scotland. I'm back at 10:25. Until then, from all the team, enjoy the rest of your evening. Goodbye.